Hi, I'm Dan Costa, Editor-in-Chief of PCMag.com, and welcome to Fast Forward, part of an ongoing conversation about living in the future. My guest today is Justin Rosenstein, co-founder and head of product for Asana. This is an app that makes teams work better together. Asana is currently PCMag's editor's choice for productivity software. It is also what we use in-house to manage our editorial workflows. We have a lot of big, passionate fans on staff. We're going to talk about personal productivity, we're going to talk about team productivity, and we're going to talk about the changing nature of work and the tools we use to get it done. Justin, thanks so much for doing the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So let's talk straight off the bat about how PCMag's using Asana, which is amazing to me that we opened up Asana to the staff. We said we're gonna roll it out slowly. We're gonna build small teams. We're gonna see who wants to. We're gonna let people onboard themselves, and it just spread through the staff, team by team, and people wanted to be on the service. You don't get that with a lot of business software products. How do you make that happen as the head of product?
Yeah, so some of it's about product design. I think historically there's been consumer software that has a higher and higher bar over time for software design. And then there's enterprise software, which you think of as ugly, old, gray. And I think we came from a consumer software background. I used to work at Facebook and at Google, but had the business needs of real enterprise customers. And so it just felt very natural to build something that was as high quality design-wise as consumer software, but had all the power and richness of something you need to really run a complex business. But I think the other thing is that the traditional way that people have done leadership, delegation, deciding what to do, is very much a holdover from the Industrial Revolution. This very top-down, hierarchical, boss tells you what to do, and you just do what you're told, and you don't even understand how your work necessarily fits into the bigger picture. Whereas the new kind of work that people do is much more collaborative, much more everyone coming together and figuring out collectively what is the work that needs to be done. So I think it's just a tool that enables everyone on the team to essentially be collaborating and co-creating the plan and then the leadership together, which I think is a lot preferable in modern environments.
So give me the Asana origin story. The short version of it is, well, you used to work at Facebook, and Facebook used this tool, and now there's Asana. Flesh that out a little bit for me.
Yeah, totally. My first job out of college was working at Google, and then after that worked at Facebook. And in both cases, I came in, or especially at Google, I came in with bright eyes and the fantasy, I'm going to be spending all my time working with brilliant people to solve important problems. I was just pretty devastated to discover that I, and maybe more sadly, the people that I was working with, literally spend most of our time not building great tools and great products, but just coordinating. Just like making sure the left hand knew what the right hand was doing, keeping everyone on the same page, status meetings and status updates. And Google's relatively a super well-run company. There's this study from McKinsey that says that the average knowledge worker literally spends more than 70% of their time not doing work, not doing whatever it is they're supposed to be doing, but doing work about work. Just all of that hell of coordination. And so at first I just assumed I must be doing something wrong, and then eventually realized, no, this is the water that people were swimming in and just had gotten accustomed to it. And so built a very simple tool at Google. And then at Facebook, I started spending time with Dustin Moskovitz, who was the co-founder of Facebook, and he had the problem. He had multiple hundreds of people working with him on his team, and so had the problem even worse than I did of just like, how do you figure out what's going on in the company? How do you keep everyone on the same page? And so we just, by day we were doing our day jobs, and then by night and on weekends we just got so obsessed with this that we started building an internal productivity system, an internal work tracking system. And we didn't even mandate it, but it just took off within the company. And so we started to realize that, yeah, like by night we were doing that, and then by day we could feel the number of meetings going down, the amount of productivity going up, just what we were able to accomplish. And so at first we were like, oh, maybe we'll keep this as a secret sauce for Facebook. And it is still, has gotten deeply integrated to how Facebook does get so much done. But the more we thought about it, we realized that the problem was universal, just the chaos within teams, the inability for everyone to stay on the same page. And the solution that we had developed wasn't unique to Facebook, wasn't unique to software companies. Anyone could benefit from that kind of clarity. And the more we thought about what we cared about as people in the world, there's so many important things that need to change. We need much better energy technology. We need to improve our education system. We need to upgrade our healthcare system, upgrade our government. And basically all the things that we realized we were passionate about deeply as humans all come down to teams of people working together. And if all the people working on all those different important projects were all spending upwards of 70% of their time on this work about work, if we could build this single horizontal tool that would enable all those organizations to be able to move faster, that just felt like such a leveraged way for us to use our time.
So it seems to me a big part of the appeal is that people intuitively understand that this could mean less meetings and less email, which is really the tools that most people use in order to coordinate these days. How is Asana just implicitly a better way of doing things than meetings and email?
Yeah. So if you have a ton of meetings and a ton of email, but then you go in and you ask someone on the team, okay, like really basic questions, like, okay, what are all the steps left between now and accomplishing our goal? Who's responsible for each of those steps? When can I expect each of those steps to be done by? Like if you had a meeting in the last 10 minutes, maybe people have an answer to that. Even then, people often don't have an answer to that question. But a day later, the information is wrong. It's outdated. If you start then sending emails back and forth, you don't know if you have the complete picture. You don't know that everyone is on the same page. No matter how many meetings or emails you throw at it, there's no single place that everyone can go to just get the super basic information about who is doing what, by when, how do all the pieces of the puzzle interconnect. And so having this single source of truth, this single work tracking system that's been designed from the bottom up to give you that kind of clarity and where everyone can be literally on the same page and looking and editing and updating and communicating around the work itself rather than having 50 different email threads or Dropbox folders, just in wherever they happen to be, taking all that information and consolidating it around tracking the individual units of work themselves just lead to these huge productivity improvements where you're not spending all this time being like, okay, it's the next day's meeting. What did we do yesterday? What are we going to do in the future? Like people who use Asana just don't have to have those stand-up meetings because you can just go to the tool and you can see, here's what we did yesterday. Here's what we have to do tomorrow.
I want to take the product and productivity from sort of an individual level to the team level and then scale beyond that. What is the number one mistake individuals make when it comes to managing their time and being productive?
I think the number one mistake people make is working on the wrong thing in the first place or not spending enough time. It's amazing how people spend 40, sometimes 80 hours of their week barreling towards some particular outcome and spend comparatively little time stopping and reflecting. Is this the outcome that I want to be going after in the first place? I think you read stories of people who on their deathbeds will reflect and they're like, wow, I was killing myself for a job that in hindsight I didn't really care about. And there were other ways that I could have, in some cases, been just as financially comfortable, but been devoting those efforts toward things that had impacts that were more dear to my heart, that were more positively important for the world. And so I think in some ways, working harder and just maximizing your efficiency in whatever direction you're going, even though it's more draining and more energy, is just kind of intellectually and almost spiritually easier than the really hard work of sitting down and being like, what do I actually care about? And given my particular skills and passions, what are the things that I can devote myself to that will most move the world in the direction I want to see?
It brings up an interesting question, is that I know a lot of people that use Asana in our office also use it to manage their personal lives. Mm-hmm. So they've got work tasks that are visible to work colleagues, and then they've got another set of tasks that are unique to them or that they share with their partner, and they're picking up groceries, and they're scheduling doctor's appointments. What's the mix? Do you get any sense of how many people are using Asana for their personal life management?
Yeah, we definitely hear amazing stories all the time of people have their weddings on Asana, people manage they have a family. And I think one of the things that was really important to us as we were designing Asana was not building something that was niche to some particular vertical, some particular industry. A lot of times you end up with these very custom tools to one particular vertical. And we want it to be horizontal software that anyone could use for any kind of team, because a lot of the most interesting teams are doing things that are quite bespoke and where there's not going to exist some custom piece of software for them. So if you can make something that works for everyone and then allow them to customize it to their particular needs, you get the best of both worlds, and Asana can be really powerful in that way. And while we mostly were designing it for verticals in the sense of a recruiting team or a marketing team or a biotech industry, there's also just, we're all on so many different teams of different kinds, and whether that's a family unit, a partnership, people use it for their churches or their soccer clubs or Burning Man camps. There's so many ways in which people participate in collectives. Because I just think of a team as a group of people who have come together toward a common purpose.
Yeah, and indeed, I wanted to get to your mission statement because it's fascinating to me that it has almost nothing to do with work. So your mission statement declares that you want to help humanity thrive by enabling teams to work together effortlessly. That is not the mission statement of a workplace productivity tool. It seems like you've got much grander plans for the product and the platform.
Yeah, well, so enabling all teams to work together effortlessly. If you take that seriously, that's a mission that would take it would take a lot to achieve. When I think of effortlessly, like you don't normally think of your body as a team, but you can think of, you have all these different limbs and organs and subsystems, and the reason that you experience yourself as a person is because all of those different subsystems are coordinated so well, so frictionlessly, that if you have a thought that you want to move your hand, you can just move your hand. If your two hands can work so perfectly in synchronization that you can play a guitar, even though each hand is doing something totally different, but the outcome is so much more in the sum of its parts. So if you could get a group of people to be able to coordinate as effortlessly as the limbs of your body could coordinate, I mean, that would probably require like brain-computer interfaces and telepathy, which in the long run we will pursue as those technologies become available. But and then thinking of larger and larger groups of people, yeah, ideally I would love to see the entire world be able to coordinate as one. That's obviously a lot of steps between an enterprise productivity tool and getting there. But
it's about the journey.
But it's about the journey, one day at a time. I think that and I hypothesize that if humanity could work together collaboratively in total, I mean, we would solve poverty, we would solve climate change, we would solve all the basic problems that we're facing, and be able to just do so much more than we're capable of doing today and create such a more beautiful world. But one day at a time. So I think when we left Facebook, one of the things that pushed us over the edge was thinking, okay, if we could build a piece of software that would enable every team in the world to be able to move 5% faster, what would that mean? Like, would that accelerate human progress by 5%, right? That's, we're thinking audaciously.
That's the goal.
Again, one day at a time. And we're definitely not at the every team in the world part. We're a very fast-growing SaaS company, but it takes time to get more users. But we did survey customers, and we asked them, how much more effective do you think you are with Asana versus without Asana? And we were like, maybe we've already hit the 5%. And we were really excited to see that the average customer reported a 45% improvement in whatever they were doing. And so for some customers, that's creating more revenue, creating more widgets, or whatever they're doing. But for the customers that inspire us, that's a nonprofit that's bringing healthcare to people in rural Nepal, who literally say that the number of patients that they're able to bring healthcare to increased dramatically once they adopted Asana, because it just improved their ability to track all those patients. When that's a biotech company that's telling us that their ability to develop systems to do diagnosis that enable them to avoid having to give people generic antibiotics, which can reduce our dependence on antibiotics, and they're moving 45% faster, or whatever, something along those lines, because they're able to manage all of their science and all of their marketing, all of the things on Asana. We think that today is a way of, by enabling teams to work together with less effort, making small contributions toward helping humanity thrive. Over time, as the software gets more and more powerful, we would love to be able to help larger and larger groups of people and be able to do more and more complex things and accelerate progress in more meaningful ways. And when you think about helping all teams work together effortlessly, if you think about all of humanity as we don't operate this way right now. Today we have war and ways in which we're definitely not operating as one team. But in the long run, I think it would be optimal if all of us work together as one team, really enabling all teams to work together effortlessly. And if you could really see a kind of dashboard for humanity, where you could see, here are all the different problems that we're working on. We're trying to solve the climate crisis, we're trying to solve poverty, trying to improve our infrastructure in all these different ways. And be able to see, just like Asana today for an individual company will provide a dashboard that shows you, here's all the projects you're working on, and here's how far along on those projects you are, and here's the status of each of those things. If you could zoom out and see the status of all the different things that people are working on across the globe, and how our collective efforts as a species are coming together in order to solve those big problems, that would be enabling all teams to work together effortlessly. So when I talk about this stuff, it sounds and is grandiose.
That is exactly what the show is about.
Yeah, so. But so I'm just trying to. I think we try really hard to both keep an eye on a really long-term vision that we think could be really powerful and impactful for the world, but also stay very humble and close to the ground on okay, what are the individual steps we can take today that will move us in that direction, and just keep trying to plot a course toward that bigger vision.
It seems to me that there's a role for artificial intelligence and learning systems in this particular space that's completely wide open and unexploited, because up to this point, in order to be, you've had to set the course, and you've had to create the tasks, and you've had to set the routines, and then this is a great way of tracking them. But it seems to me that there's software that should be able to learn that you have to have a monthly meeting. It needs to be scheduled. You know who's going to be in this meeting, and it should remind you that you're overdue, and you've got to get this done, and it should. It seems like there should be some learning that businesses and teams can automate as opposed to having to self-create. How far away are we from having some of those systems help us?
I think of Asana as a team brain, continuing with some of the analogies I've given, where it's a single mental space that all the people on the team can come together and use. And what we focused on so far is the memory capacity of that team brain, is making sure, because most teams just don't have a collective memory. They use meetings to try to keep reconstituting, what is it we're supposed to work on today? What's the highest priority? So our first step has been just a memory, just everyone being able to see what is going on and what we need to do. But if you want to really have a team brain, you also want intelligence on top of that. And one form of that intelligence would be artificial intelligence. As recently as when I was in college, one example of artificial intelligence was map routing, just something we totally take for granted today. But Google Maps or MapQuest, being able to plot the shortest distance from one city to another is arguably an artificial intelligence problem.
And it was a hypothetical that in real time, imagine if you could track the traffic in order to actually
madness, right?
route you along different routes. It's maybe someday we'll be able to do that.
Yeah, so artificial intelligence is generally the term that is used for whatever we don't know how to get computers to do yet. Right, so at the time, mapping from point A to point B was artificial intelligence. I think now we can think of artificial intelligence as point A and point B, instead of being locations, being a team that says, okay, here's where we are today, here's where we want to be, here's the goal we're trying to accomplish, and a computer being able to tell you, both estimate, like Google Maps can, how long is it going to take you to get there, and what is the optimal path for getting there. Because right now you have humans, project managers, people spending all this time figuring out, either figuring out what are all the steps when those steps have been figured out by other people in the past, sometimes in their own company, or trying to figure out, okay, this person's on vacation, this person has this many meetings, therefore in order to minimize the total cost of the project, we should have this person do this thing first. But computers should be so much better at that sort of work. And so getting to a point where the team can just describe at a very high level of things that they understand about what needs to happen, and the software can do all of that project management for them behind the scenes and optimally get everyone to work on exactly the right thing, exactly the right time, even down to understanding this person is better at this kind of task. This person enjoys working in the morning. This person does better in the afternoon. This person works well with this person. Software that could understand all those variables and figure out exactly the optimal way to get everyone configured would be so powerful. There's artificial intelligence, and then there's also collective intelligence. So if you're running a conference, that is, I think most people, when they decide they want to run a conference, reinvent a lot of the wheel and then end up making a lot of the same mistakes that have been made in the past. If you could harness, Asana has all these customers, so many of whom have run conferences before. If we could pull together that information in an intelligent way, and it's you want to do a conference, you want to go IPO, do you want to do any of these things that have been done before?
Yeah, there's a series of tasks, there's a series of steps, there are templates that you could import. Exactly. The same way you import letterhead, obviously more complicated than that, but that process, you can learn from it.
Yeah, exactly. So we just a few months ago launched templates in Asana, but I think they're powerful relative to what was there before, and they're very simple relative to the kind of grand visions you could imagine. So what if you had think of a GitHub for templates, or using AI to pull together all of the different best practices, so that when you're doing something, so that in the future Asana becomes this system where you just explain what you're trying to do, and it really guides you as this, omniscient project manager / omniscient executive coach, or / coach of whatever it is exactly the thing you're doing, and guides you smoothly to accomplishing your goal.
I think that we're deluged with new technologies all the time. All these new technologies tend to provide more information, more data, but I sort of see them in two different camps. One of them are sort of weapons of mass distraction that are designed to occupy our time, to amuse us, to distract us, literally just to increase time on site or time in the app. And then there's another set of tools that's sort of battling against that give individuals and businesses control over their time and insights. And it seems like there's a battle going on between these two types of technology products. Who do you think is winning?
Yeah, I don't know if the battle is between the two technology products, but there's definitely a war for our attention, and a question of who. Yeah, Asana is very dedicated to. Asana kind of starts from the premise that you, as a team, have a mission. You have a thing you want to accomplish, and Asana is a tool that where you are the subject, and you are the actual customer who's paying for that tool, and we help you accomplish the goal that you're setting out to accomplish. I think a lot of software where the customer is the advertiser, it's a tool to enable advertisers to enact their will of implanting ideas into the minds of users, and then users are not the customer, users are the product. When you have a dynamic like that, even with good intentions, it just becomes extremely difficult to avoid a situation where you end up optimizing for eyeballs, for time spent on site. And even if you have really good intentions, the fact that there's an arms race where if you do something that makes your software a little less addictive, there's always someone more unscrupulous out there who's willing to do some cheaper trick and hack you, like pull your attention at an even lower level of the brainstem. My friend Tristan Harris did a TED Talk on this recently that I think is really worth watching, that goes deep on this and the difference between time spent and time well spent. I have a hard time imagining how an advertising-based business model doesn't inevitably lead to those problems. And when you don't have an advertising-based business model, you generally just don't get those problems because it's not in the interests of the software developer to try to make you spend more time on it because they're not getting anything out of that. Maybe some extra stickiness or engagement, but it's usually balanced. So I think the problem is endemic to the advertising business model, and I would love to see the companies that are doing that today be able to find alternate business models that don't put their incentives at odds with the incentives of the user.
And easier said than done, especially running a media site the way I do.
Much easier said than done. I think we need a revolution on the way we do media. I'd be speculating to give my thoughts on how we might go about doing that, but I agree it's a really hard problem.
I mean, we've opened up Ziff Davis and PCMag have a variety of different revenue streams. Advertising is still a big piece of it, but affiliate links and commerce marketing is one channel. Licensing is another. So it's not all based in advertising, but it's harder and harder to make a media business based solely on advertising, just because users themselves are revolting. They're installing ad blockers and they're putting up walls, and they're not visiting sites that distract them with a lot of advertisements.
Yeah. I'm not an expert enough on the subject, but the kinds of directions I would love to see people experiment with are, I expect that people have come accustomed to information being free, but I think people would be willing to pay small amounts for it if it were extremely convenient. But today, if you want to, you go to like the Wall Street Journal or something, you hit this big paywall, and while it's not in the grand scheme of things a massive inconvenience to take out your credit card and type in those numbers.
Fill out a form and then hit submit.
Yeah, and then what you're really doing is you're creating a relationship with that particular news provider, which is not, as a user, what you're trying to do. You're trying to read that one piece of content. And so if it were effortless to be able to say like, oh, I've read the first 3 paragraphs of this, and this is rich information that's actually useful to me, I want to read more, and it was one click easy to do that, I haven't thought about this deeply enough to say like, that's the solution, and then we'll end advertising. But I wish, maybe there's brilliant people out there thinking about this, but I'm surprised that there isn't more thought being given to like, okay, what comes after advertising?
Yeah. There have been a number of micropayment initiatives and experiments, but nothing's really caught. I always thought PayPal back in the day would be the company to do this. Everybody has an account. It's just one click easy, but they've never been able to pull it off. Yeah, really disappointing. Before we wrap, I want to get to some personal questions. We talked right before we started filming. You are still doing the 5 glasses of water a day thing. Can you explain to the audience how that works?
Why is this one more way in which I behave strangely? No, I think that another thing on personal productivity, I would say, is that people often optimize for time rather than energy. So office cultures where people are working 80-hour weeks, I'm sure there exist humans who can focus for 80 hours and get good work done, but they've got to be very rare. I think a lot of the cultures...
It's atypical at the very least.
It's very atypical, and I think a lot of the cultures where it's like, you got to be at your desk and working all the time, if I sit down with those people and have honest conversations with them, I'm like, so what are you really doing all the time? And they'll admit, like, I'm kind of zoned out, I haven't slept enough, I'm not, my attention is distracted, but it would be socially unacceptable for me to leave because everyone's heads down and they look like they're busy, but they're probably also kind of zoned out and half distracted. So it becomes this, I think, kind of machismo, ego culture of everyone feels like they've got to be doing that together. When both research and my own experience, I don't know about yours, is that if you optimize instead for energy, where when you are working, you're really tightly focused and doing the things that actually matter, and then you take breaks, and then you take care of yourself, that is actually what optimizes your output. And so I just spend a fair amount of time thinking about optimizing my routines in order to make sure that I'm healthy, in the case of the water glasses, well hydrated, like really basic things that it can be easy to forget about when you're really focused on achieving your goals. And so I think that some people are like, oh, I don't have time to meditate, I don't have time to exercise. But I would say you don't have time not to. Like if you're genuinely trying to maximize productivity and not just your sense of productivity, I think the research is pretty clear that those are things worth taking the time to do.
Yeah, again, not about how much time you spend in the app or on the service, it's about time well spent.
Exactly. Exactly.
So speaking of time well spent, how much sleep do you personally get every night? When do you go to sleep? When do you wake up generally?
Yeah, like 10:30 to 7. Maybe 11 to 7, yeah.
Okay, so good, healthy.
Enough, yeah.
A good, healthy night's sleep.
And when I don't, I just feel it. And again, like I once asked Elon Musk about this, and he was just like, "Yeah, just drink a lot of caffeine and and just get through it." And I was like, "Okay," but I think some people like that are just special, and it can be dangerous to assume that you're biologically wired the same way he is, or the same way that certain people are.
Yeah.
And I've tried to live that way, and I can tell I'm not as productive. Whereas if I get the full night's sleep and go into work and then, work a 10-hour day with a bunch of little breaks in the middle, that's what optimizes my output.
I want to ask you the questions I ask everybody who comes on the show. Is there a technological trend that concerns you, that keeps you up at night? You just think is going in the wrong direction?
I think that the advertising thing we talked about, maybe there's a meta trend I'll speak to, which is people so often assume that if there is a new technology, it must be progress. Mm-hmm. that surely adding this new thing to our lives will make our lives better, when that's just not true. You can build new technologies that can do good for the world or do harm for the world. And we're so quick to just accept new things as this is what we're doing now. I mean, this is a cliche at this point, but like you walk outside and you see everyone staring at their phones. You could imagine that having gone down differently, where we as a culture were like, this new mobile phone technology has come into existence. Let's have a healthy, civil conversation about what role we want that to play in our lives. We believe that it should be considered rude to be walking around the streets staring at your phone.
Some etiquette around it.
Yeah, create etiquette around it.
Google Glass came out and instantly people said, no, that's too far.
Yeah,
we're not going to do that.
There are limits.
But then a year later, 6 months later,
I think that was more about fashion than etiquette.
Yeah, Glass, Snapchat, the Snapchat goggles came out and everybody's like, oh, I got to have those.
Yeah, I got to have one of those. And so, yeah, I look at new technologies like phones or social networking, and I mean, I worked at Facebook. I think a lot of that stuff has been hugely valuable to the world, but then other parts have a dark side. And I wish there was just more consciousness and a lively conversation. I mean, I think that is starting to happen now, but as new technologies come out, us really thinking, what is the right way to use this? Even things like cryptocurrency, I haven't thought about this enough to have a firm opinion, but when I'm in conversation with enthusiasts who are super excited and they're telling me all the benefits of this, I ask questions like, well, how do you know that that's actually not going to lead to bad things where suddenly we can't regulate currency, and so we'll be unable to tax the people who are the most technologically literate, and that will lead to increased wealth inequality. And often they're just like, oh, we'll figure that out. I'm like, are you sure? Because it could just be bad. And again, maybe people have thought this through, but just taking more time to actually consider what are the social implications of these technologies before just jumping breathlessly at like, this is the greatest new thing.
On the flip side, is there a product, a tool, or a service that you use every day that has totally changed your life? And obviously you can't say Asana.
There's a product, Thistle, I am an investor in, but causality is the other way. I invested because it was so life-changing. Okay. They do meal delivery, which I know a bunch of startups have done, but you just sign up and are like, so we have food at Asana, so for me it's the weekends. I'm like, I want on weekends to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they on Friday will just deliver breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And like a lot of things in the early phase right now, I think it's on the expensive side, but they're working on that.
They need to scale.
Yeah, they need to scale, and the cost will come down over time. Over time, in the way that Uber, like, the need for more transportation was this huge pent-up demand. And as soon as Uber and Lyft came along and said, here, we're going to make it one click easy for you to get transportation, it totally changed how we move around. I think food's the same way. Obviously, there's a lot of people who love to enjoy cooking food every day. But for a lot of us, the idea that you could have really healthy and delicious food delivered to you on exactly the schedule you want. And for me, I'm a vegan after considering that for a long time. I just think that's the only way I can live in a way that's consistent in integrity with my values. And it's hard to live as a vegan in the world we live in. Yeah. And so they have a vegan option started. That was the only option. And so being able to have healthy, delicious, vegan food delivered, to meet all of your nutritional needs, I think is going to be a game changer.
All right. If people want to follow you online and follow Asana, but follow you in particular, how can they find you? Where should they go?
I have a Twitter account that's @Rosenstein, Rosenstein. And there's also Wavelength, is wavelength.com is a new publication we started recently that has team productivity information, gives you information on how to apply a purposeful, mindful approach to teamwork. And I also have a website, oneproject.org, that you can get updates about if you're interested and my current thinking on some of the bigger level, like humanity level dashboard systems change stuff that I was alluding to.
Excellent. I will definitely check it out. We'll put some links in the story. Justin, thanks very much for doing the show.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate it. If you want to learn more about Asana, of course, you can go on PCMag.com and read our full review. Jill Duffy wrote it. She's a big fan. PCMag is generally a big fan as well. Thanks so much for tuning into the show today. This has been Fast Forward. If you want to get back episodes of this show, you can find them on PCMag.com. You can find them on Apple Podcasts and anywhere that fine podcasts are given away for free on the internet. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back next week. I'll see you in the future.